Britain's current top wrestling star, Will Ospreay, coming into Wembley Stadium undefeated in AEW to challenge their still popular champion, despite being booked that much weaker since he won the belt, Swerve Strickland, was the biggest matchup AEW could have mustered to headline by far their biggest show of the year, all in London 2024 on August 25th. There was no good reason to rush this match already for Forbidden Door 2024 on July 30th. Beyond Tony Khan not being comfortable with headlining anyone from any of the 3 other promotions he was working with, after having already signed everyone from New Japan he could overpay for, and having all of them except Ospreay quickly proven capable of main eventing. It's too soon to give up on Swerve by taking the title off of him, after this botched reign where he mostly just gets beat up on TV every week, but there's no point in handing Ospreay his first loss when he's your biggest draw to headline your biggest show of the year, which still has around 10,000 seats of the 51,000 available, and could be configured for almost 40,000 more if there were actual demand, whereas Forbidden Door only had a padded attendance of 11,477. A year ago, I would have been overjoyed by Ospreay challenging Swerve at Forbidden Door, and frankly, I could care less about AEW's business, so long as they continue to exist, even if just by hemorrhaging Shad Khan's billions. At that point, Ospreay was the best worker of New Japan's top stars by a mile, since Gato refuses to book Zack Sabre Jr. as anything but a mid-carder, and has completely devalued Shingo Takagi after he had a great run in his first 3 years in the promotion. Meanwhile, Swerve, who had never even held a singles title in AEW, has really come out of nowhere in terms of AEW booking to become the top champion. A year ago on Forbidden Door, he was a curtain jerker in an 8-man tag on 0 Hour. Granted, there was nowhere to go but up from MJF's cornball spasming kindergarten comedy routine in his pitiful phoned-in title defense against the sadly almost crippled former ace of New Japan, Hiroshi Tanahashi. But these are big upgrades over that matchup, even if we could have been with Tony Khan in his basement when he ran them through his TEW wrestling simulator, with everyone healthy, motivated, and in their prime. Will vs. Swerve was the definition of a match that got there by being a big show main event. Will has had several opponents in AEW who are better wrestlers than Swerve, and do a much better job of being a base for him and setting him up to look great. In chronological order, we got Konosuke Takeshita, Claudio Castagnoli, Bryan Danielson, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly. He also had a match with Rey Fenix that was a cool mirror match, with elite high flyers matching and topping one another. Every one of these matches didn't wind up being better than the Swerve match in the absolute. However, this main event went miles further, doing a lot more wild and dangerous spots, and kicking out of endless finishers, just to get to a level on par with what Will did in mid-card pay-per-view matches, or even TV matches that were half the length, against opponents who weren't presented as having a snowball's chance in hell of beating him, however great we may know them to be as performers. I don't want to diss Swerve or even this match, just to keep things in perspective. Even though the match didn't have a lot going for it beyond the big spots, it actually exceeded my expectations. I was really hoping to instead be making a video about Bryan Danielson vs Shingo Takagi, a match that on paper should have been very good, but neither took advantage of Shingo's strength as an energetic sprinter, nor came anywhere close to doing that extra to try to save the pay-per-view or steal the show. Had they been the focus of the show, and had the extra time, maybe they would have actually gotten out of second gear. Whatever we think of Will vs Swerve, no one can argue that they didn't go the extra mile. Even if their match largely stood out because the other 13 matches were mostly passable to bad, and we actually got to see crazy stunts like the Swerve Stomp to the floor, and someone finally kicking out of the Stormbreaker, Will has once again managed to deliver the match to talk about this week. In the end, the destination is way more important than the course traveled. They had a very good match, and Swerve stepped it up when he needed to. I thought this would be 3 stars, which has been the rare high point of Swerve's AEW career. This match shows the level Swerve can reach when he wants to, but that's my main problem with him in general. He's a guy that has all the talent and ability to consistently be a top worker, but outside of one great cage match in Lucha Underground, against a tremendously underrated and now totally squandered in AEW, AR Fox, Swerve rarely shows more than flashes of this. We can see here that he can do most of what Will can do, match him or mirror him when he really wants to. This tended to be the best stuff in their match, and granted that was partly due to the surprise. I'm not saying Swerve should be Will, it's good that he has his own identity, and one of the reasons he rose from the ashes of Tony's misbooking to become world champion. That being said, I want to see a guy like Fenix who will do his great stuff all the time, and if you can hang with him or match him, he can do even greater stuff by taking advantage of the opponent with athletic spots, sequences, and counters that require two great athletes, or playing off a power wrestler. Swerve can do that too, as proved by this match, or his own variation of it. The problem is, even here he'd mostly rather keep things easy and basic, stand around exchanging supposedly menacing looks, and flat-footed chops. The beginning was kind of dull and empty because they weren't doing their spots yet for the most part, but as expected, they weren't telling any stories or building the match in any real manner. They defaulted to Will's New Japan style long match striking opening, and did a lot of staring each other down to create tension and build anticipation. Still, it was Swerve's bout at Swerve's methodical pace. They did a couple cool sequences to keep the crowd into it, and since this was a match the fans actually cared about, that was enough to get by on initially. Ultimately, they utilized the most basic escalation throughout the 27 minutes, do some flashy stuff, avoid some favorite moves, kick out of some finishers, do more big deadly stuff until someone finally stays down. They at least got across that the title meant everything to both wrestlers, which was ultimately what they needed to do. The match picked up around the 10-minute mark with Ospreay missing a pescado and having his swan dive move on the barricade backfire as well, but countering into a sweet Frankensteiner off the barricade. Swerve was definitely reining Will in here, keeping it as a slow burner, both as a strategy to win, where he was taunting Will and trying to get him to exchange strikes with him, and as a style of wrestling, so they didn't do what he deemed to be too much too soon. The first great spot came 15 minutes in, when Ospreay went to finish with the Os Cutter, but Swerve jumped to the middle rope just after him, and intercepted him with a Swerve Stomp. Swerve avoided an Os Cutter on the apron after hitting an Avalanche Olympic Slam. Swerve then set up a Swerve Stomp with Ospreay on the apron, but Ospreay got off the apron, so after some delay, and with no logical setup, Swerve hit the spot of the match, an insane Swerve Stomp to the outside, where Will got sandwiched by a Forbidden Door desktop. Swerve did another spot we never see, pile driving Will on the barricade. Swerve tried to finish with a Swerve Stomp, but Will unbalanced him and hit a Swan Dive Cutter. The final 7 minutes was the finisher spam, with Swerve kicking out of the Os Cutter, injuring his hand blocking the hidden blade, and sidestepping another Os Cutter. He got hit with another Os Cutter into a Stormbreaker, but somehow kicked out. Hamming it up as though he were possessed by the devil, Will tried his hardest to hit the Tiger Driver 91 that he just swore he'd never use again after his April 21st win over Bryan Danielson. Swerve turned it into a pinning predicament and came back using Ospreay's own hidden blade on him. Will avoided another Swerve Stomp and tried another hidden blade, but Swerve ducked, so Will took referee Paul Turner out with what was actually just a high cross body. Swerve tried a poison runner while Will was bemoaning the damage he did to the ref, but Will landed on his feet and hit the hidden blade, except now there was no ref to count. The ref bump was actually okay, but logic began to break down, and everything went to hell as always when Don Callis came out to corrupt Ospreay. Will is 18-0 in AEW without screwdrivering anyone, and had already proven he was willing to do what he must to win by trying the Tiger Driver 91 twice. Literally anything he did, if there were a ref, might have finished a seemingly knocked out Strickland, but the Callis rain delay wasted well over a minute in this amateur hour segment, trying to convince Will to use the screwdriver of doom we know from ruining Kenny Omega matches. There was all sorts of Z-grade acting, with Will doing the least believable portrayal of emotional turmoil ever, Callis and Prince Nana having a lame shoving contest, and Will nearly using the screwdriver on Nana of all people. Swerve had endless time to recover while these clowns were losing Will the match by displaying all sorts of cheesy facials that only their mother and MJF could love. Swerve reasonably cut Ospreay right off with the house call when this nonsense was over, and nearly won with a Swerve Stomp, with Aubrey Edwards conveniently arriving just in time to count the fall. Will had a noticeable bruise on his right cheek now from Swerve's boot, which was pretty shocking despite the high-impact nature of the contest, and was also writhing in pain because Swerve did a variation of the old Penta breaks the arm bit. Will kicked out of another house call, and in one of the corniest fighting spirit displays ever, wobbled around unbelievably like a character of a drunken sailor while taking his elbow pad off for his hidden blade. Swerve just watched him land it with no impact, and caught him. Swerve patted him on the head a couple times, and let him go because he knew he was out on his feet, which would have been the finish in a real combat sport, saving the face from having to kill the other face, but since wrestling is afraid to allow the refs to protect the fighters, Swerve had to eventually get around to doing another house call, and his big pressure to beat the opponent who was already beaten. This was more of a collection of moments than a cohesive wrestling match, but the last 7 minutes had a lot of memorable stuff, even if some of it was memorable for the wrong reasons. The connective tissue between the sequences was never good, but in the second half, that was less noticeable, and arguably less important, because they threw so much at the wall, and a lot of it stuck. I think they survived this with Swerve getting an important win to prove he's actually the man, while giving Will an ascendancy storyline because he still has to prove he's ready to be the top dog. I'm excited that it looks like Bryan Danielson will have to win the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, and thus headline Wembley. If AEW were actually trying to be profitable though, it would have made much more sense to have Danielson challenge Swerve at WrestleDream 2024 in their hometown of Washington on October 10th, after having the Commonwealth Kingpin make his first challenge in England. I give this match 3.5 stars out of 5.